You're listening to Mr. Credit on San Diego 1700 with local credit expert Derek Evans. Now, live in studio, Mr. Credit.
So, if you're a Facebooker, just do a search for Mr. Credit, and you will find me. I will be the first person who shows up. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my missions in life. Now, I've found some real purpose here in helping to educate you about how credit scoring works. That's one of them. I also have been working a lot on helping educate the kids. I've been going into high schools, doing presentations, and helping these juniors and seniors understand what they're going to be dealing with when they get to college. And fortunately, there's been some laws that have passed recently that are going to help reduce some of the issues that they're going to be confronted with. But the biggest mission that I have is to bring the truth to you about how credit scoring works. And one of those is bankruptcy. Now, you hear the word bankruptcy and you instantly think, oh, that's something that's bad. But you've got to keep in mind the reality of the situation. Remember yesterday when we talked about, well, how is credit controlled? Well, it's controlled by the lending institutions, right? Because they're the ones who need credit scoring to help make lending decisions quickly. That's the reason that credit scoring exists. Now, when someone files for bankruptcy, who loses? The lending institution loses. So at some point in time, they've got it into your brain. They got it into my brain too, but I had to become educated about this. I wasn't born with this knowledge that bankruptcy is bad. Well, it's not. It's actually good for you. It's bad for the banks. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And I wanted to start off with an email that I got about a week ago. This is from an actual client of mine now. Mr. Credit, I've never missed a payment before in my life, but my score is under 600. I've got almost $90,000 in credit card debt, and I can barely afford the minimum payments now. I feel trapped by this $90,000 gorilla, and I want to become debt-free, and I want to have good credit. So what are my options here? Well, the simple truth is this. As you just heard Ray say in his promo there, when you have high balances on your credit cards with respect to what the limits are, your credit score gets to a point where it hits a ceiling pretty quickly. And even if you've never missed a payment before in your life, remember we talked yesterday, payment history, although it's the biggest component of the score, it's only 35%. So there's 65% other stuff there that you need to be knowledgeable of and you need to be taking action on if you want to have your maximum credit score. Well, even if you've never missed a payment before in your life, if you have high balances or high utilization, remember we talked yesterday, that's 30% of the score, almost as important. You can hit a ceiling with your credit score. So it doesn't matter if you've never missed a payment, you can still have a credit score under 600, and this was a perfect example of that. This guy's name was Ray. And ultimately, what we determined was that it would be a good idea for him to do a consultation and see if he would file for if he should file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So in the studio with me today, and every Wednesday we're going to be talking about bankruptcy. It's so important. It's such a good financial tool, and I want you to understand how it works. In the studio with me today, William McDonald from the McDonald Legal Group. He's the only person I recommend you speak with about this. I've worked with dozens of bankruptcy attorneys here in San Diego, and none of them care as much about their clients as William does. William, thank you for joining us today, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Credit.
Appreciate that. So, the first thing I want to really bring up here is the difference between, what people think about bankruptcy and what it really is. Because bankruptcy is really, we call it bankruptcy protection or bankruptcy relief. Can you explain that a little bit?
That's correct. The bankruptcy laws are really there to protect you, as opposed to, I think a lot of people are afraid of bankruptcy and the word bankruptcy. But the reality is bankruptcy stops credit collection efforts. It gives you a fresh start so you can get back on track and really move forward. So the protection is there to stop collection action, the harassing phone calls, the letters. It stops repossessions, foreclosures.
So protect your assets too. Right?
Exactly.
Because you can have assets and file for bankruptcy, and that's one of the myths we're going to talk about a little later in the show. Is that when we say bankruptcy protection, what I'm telling you is that you actually can have assets, file for bankruptcy, and keep those assets. And we're going to define what some of those rules are with the different types of bankruptcies that exist. A lot of people think, if I have any money in the bank at all, then I can't file for bankruptcy. I have to be negative in my checking account, or I have to have no money, no assets, no car, no house. If I have anything like that, they're going to take it away from me, and it's just not true. And when we talk about bankruptcy relief, this is what we talk about with Ray's email. It's easy to get drowned in credit card debt. It's set up that way on purpose. Okay, when you look at your credit card situation, is it really set up to be very good for you? It's not. It's set up to be easy for you. It's set up to be good for the bank. The bank is the one who makes a lot of money on the credit cards. Remember how we talked about how having a credit card is so important to your credit score. If you don't have a credit card, you're missing 30% of the credit score. So you're not at your maximum credit score unless you have a credit card. And why is that? Draw it back to the fact that we know that the banks are the ones who need the credit scoring models, so they have a lot of influence on it, and they're the ones who do what? Make a lot of money on credit cards. So once you get to a point where your credit cards have gotten to the limits, maybe they're over the limits or they're approaching the limits fastly, you've really come to a crossroads. What are you going to do, especially if you're using those to live on? A lot of people not just become unemployed, but have reduced wages. They've got cut back on hours and things like that. They've had to take a different job that didn't pay as well as the one before, and people have been using their credit cards. Well, when you get to a head, when you hit that wall, what are you going to do? And one of the things I always advise people to do if they have a lot of credit card debt is look at Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And the reason that we recommend Chapter 7 bankruptcy is because you can wipe all of this debt out completely, along with many other things we're going to talk about later in the show. And most importantly, from my perspective as Mr. Credit, is that you can actually have a very good credit score out of the discharge, which is only about 90 days down the road. So I wouldn't be telling you this if I hadn't seen thousands of these cases. I worked specifically with people who were post-bankruptcy for years, and I know the ins and outs of how this works. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, come on, I've heard horror stories about people filing for bankruptcy and then their credit's ruined for years. This is not the way it is supposed to be. Does it occur? Yes, but when it does, it's erroneous. Here's what happens with the bankruptcy with respect to your credit. I want you to understand this. Okay, this is an important aspect to understanding bankruptcy, is the way it's supposed to work with your credit. If you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and you discharge an account in that bankruptcy, all the negative marks on that account, all the late payments that you might have made, if it's a collection, the Class 9 item of that collection that hurts your credit score, all that stuff is supposed to be mooted. Okay, it's supposed to be eliminated from what the scoring model is picking up and consolidated into the bankruptcy public record. Now, the bankruptcy public record is no more harmful to your credit score than getting a 90-day late payment on a credit card, an auto loan, a mortgage, getting a collection for $100 or for $50 from the city of San Diego for a parking ticket. And by the way, if you're not paying your parking tickets in the city of San Diego, they will hit you with a collection. They won't necessarily wait 90 days. They see you're not paying it, they send you the last chance letter, and bam, now you have a collection on your credit report, just as damaging as the public record filing that shows up for the bankruptcy. And that's a fact. So the point is, you need to understand the truth here. And the truth is that filing for bankruptcy does not destroy your credit, and in most cases it actually causes your score to go much higher. And that's one of the reasons that I want to talk about it every single week, because it's the most misunderstood aspect of credit scoring is bankruptcy and the effect that it has. So I also want to make sure everyone knows we're still running we're doing this contest every week. So if you think you have the lowest credit score out there, email me, askmrcredit@yahoo.com. We're going to pick a winner every week. And hey, you get a free Mr. Credit t-shirt just for entering, so you may as well email me. If you don't think you have good credit, these t-shirts are cool, man, I'm telling you. And you'll be the talk of the town if you wear this in the gym, I'm telling you right now. So email me, askmrcredit@yahoo.com, or do a Facebook search for Mr. Credit, and let me know you want to enter the contest. I'll send you the directions. It's very simple. And if you win, I will help you get to your maximum credit score for free. You can't beat it. If you have questions, call into the show, 866-405-1717. If you don't want to come on air, that's fine. But if you need answers right now, call 858-571-0271. A Mr. Credit Professional, a credit professional, will answer your questions right now. If you don't want to call on the show, that's fine. 858-571-0271, and we will get your questions answered. So, William, I want to get back to some of the common things that are involved here with bankruptcy. So what do you think are the most common issues that someone might have where they are considering a bankruptcy?
The most common issues are what you highlighted from the outset here is high credit card debt, where people, they can barely afford the minimum payments anymore, and they've reached a point where they're going to go late, and they need somewhere to turn.